either you're green and growing or you're ripe and rotting. That's true as a parent, as a leader, as a person in business, as a spouse, as a citizen. And don't arrive. Don't ever get to a point where you're, once in a while somebody say, yeah, I have enough stuff to read or I have enough stuff to think about. I would say don't arrive. One of the most important things you can do is get better and better over time with your interview process. Google right now, they have some of the most high-performing people in the world, and they hire about 0.7% of the applicants. Part of the reason they do that, and they have to do that, is they say, look, we're not going to have managers with 5 employees reporting to them. We're going to have managers with 20 or 30 employees reporting to them. So if we hire people that are not self-directed and self-motivated and are not some of the best performers, our managers won't be able to deal with that.
What up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery. As always, my friends, the universe steps in and gives us what we need. I'm almost baffled right now because I did this interview in fall 2017, okay? I've been in a role now since February of 18, leading a large office, and I wish I would have listened to this interview 5 times between now and then. But you know what? Here's the cool thing is the universe, like I said, always gives us what we need. It's the perfect timing. I could not have asked. Like, I had to go and, I'm thinking, okay, what interview am I going to put out this week? So I went into the folder I have with all the older interviews I've done. I've got about 20 of them that haven't been released yet. And I picked this one and I start listening to it. And I'm like, holy cow. This is like everything I'm dealing with right now in my leadership role in my office. Dude, it's perfect. It is absolutely perfect. I just have, oh my God. Thank you, universe. And listen, I hope this gives you the same, what I've taken from it. Obviously I'm almost at a loss for words here. It's just super, super cool when things like that happen. And I'm sure you guys relate, and it happens all the time to you in certain areas. All right, anyway, that said, I'm rambling. I just want to get you the interview. I want to thank you again for listening. Even though we've been bi-weekly, our listenership is still growing every episode. So that's awesome. And again, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate you, and enjoy Jonathan Fanning, leadership expert. Hey, what's up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery, and I'm with Jonathan Fanning today. And Jonathan is the author of 3 books and has been coaching leaders from Fortune 500 executives to sole proprietors for over 15 years. If you're familiar with TED Talks, Jonathan was voted the best speaker at a recent TED conference. I'd love to know what it takes to become the best speaker at a TED conference. He's also built several successful businesses, including a national children's fitness franchise, an entrepreneur adventure, which helps young people experience business startups and ownership. He has inspired and challenged audiences with his message in 49 states and 3 continents. And Jonathan lives in New York with his amazing wife, Dominica, and 2 angelic daughters, Ella and Maya. And you can let me know if I said their names right.
You got them all. Very good.
Awesome. So let's, hey, first off, just thanks for spending some time with us, man. Really appreciate it.
Sure. No, glad to be here.
We met at the leadership for the Mass Association. Realtors had you come in and do a keynote for us on leadership, which was just awesome. And, after listening to you, I was inspired and I loved your story. And I said, hey, I got to get this guy on my podcast. So I want to jump into that. But before we get there, what does it take to be voted the best speaker at a TED conference?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question, I think. Yeah, TED conferences are usually a full day, so mine was a full day, and just meeting the other speakers was an honor, and it was overwhelming. One of the other speakers, he invented a way to launch an airplane off of an aircraft carrier that they use on one aircraft carrier in the world right now, and it uses magnetic levitation. And the guy works for 30 years on this. So I meet him in the audition process. And he said 18 minutes. TED Talks are supposed to be about 18 or under. And he said, 18 minutes, that's a long time to be talking about a topic. I looked at the guy. I thought, you've been doing this for 30 years. I think you have that in your back pocket, which he absolutely did. I don't know is the answer. It better be engaging. You better get people thinking. I think when you speak, if you don't have energy, it's hard to bring energy out of a group of people. If the stories you tell and the things you share, if you have a lot of passion for them and they are intriguing things, then that can help.
Well, and the reason I ask, honestly, is I feel like in the realm of leadership, it's probably the same qualities that would make somebody a great leader that would, help somebody become a great speaker or give a great TED Talk, right? Everything that you just mentioned. What was your TED Talk about?
My TED Talk was on creative leadership. My third book is called They Change Things, and it's about creative leadership lessons from some legends in history, some that we've all heard of and some that no one probably reading the book has heard of, because they're from all walks of life, from a kindergarten teacher to a 9-year-old kid to Isaac Newton, but it's some lessons from their lives that are behind the scenes that most of us don't know. That was the topic of my TED Talk.
Love it. Love it.
I agree with you. Absolutely. Your statement about great leadership and great speakers, there are some commonalities, but you can be a great speaker without being a very good leader. It's probably harder to go the other way around.
So talk to us about that. So when you say you could be a great speaker without being a great leader, what does that look like?
I mean, there are many, many, many great speakers who, if the closer you get to them, the less authentic they might be, or the less they might live their message. So if you can communicate something, that's one thing. But if behind the scenes or in your day-to-day life, you don't live that, people that get to know you will see it, and they'll be less and less inclined to follow you, or they'll follow, but not with a lot of engagement or energy.
So do you feel like a big part of leadership is authenticity?
I do. I absolutely do. Yeah. I mean, to me, one of the easiest ways to look at leadership is, do people follow you because they want to? One of my favorite authors, John Maxwell, he spoke at the United Nations a few years ago to people that lead the free world, essentially, leaders from hundreds of countries around the world. And he said, your followers always ask 3 simple questions. And I think he was accurate on this. He said, they ask, can I trust this person? Does this person care about me? And then third, and I think it's third for a reason, can this person actually help me? I think we tend to, even if we haven't communicated those 3 questions, we tend to ask those. We say, will I let this person influence my life? Well, can I trust them, and do they care about me?
That makes a ton of sense.
Before I'm not worried about, can they help me? Now a great speaker can say things that can help you, even if they don't necessarily have the other 2, in the bag. But the more you get to know them, the more, you're involved in a relationship with them, working or whatever, you want to know the first 2 are there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think most people, when you meet someone, that's probably the first thing you're thinking, do I trust this person? It's like inherent, right?
Sure.
And then the second one you mentioned is, does this person care? Where does that kind of fit into it?
I think it fits in both. As a speaker, I constantly remind myself, I'm not speaking for me.
I know I brought that up at the beginning, but let's just take it into the leadership context now of being a leader. I know there's a lot of our listeners, real estate agents, a lot of them run big real estate teams. And I feel like one of the biggest challenges we face as real estate agents is we get really, really good at sales, right? And selling things and persuading people. But now when we all of a sudden have, people looking up to us and we have these teams, there's a huge disconnect. So selling and leadership are 2 completely different sides of the spectrum.
Oh, they definitely are. Yeah, I had a client years ago that was an incredible salesperson, and he got promoted through the ranks, and he'd sell this and this, and he'd sell bigger and bigger deals and packages and bigger quarters. And then he eventually becomes a head of a division. And in the leadership role, he was nowhere near what he was in the sales role. And part of that was he was selling something else. And in the leadership role, you're selling you, and you're selling the person on themselves, not just a product or a service. And people eventually figure out who you are. And he was great at talking the game, and, first connection, he was phenomenal at that. But the long-term trust, the long-term, do you care about me? It's the person, you and I meet them all the time, but they ask about your kids. They ask about what'd you do over the weekend? And they don't actually listen. And we find out very quickly the next time we see them, when they ask the same questions, wait, how old are your kids again? And you're like, last time we talked, I mentioned I don't have any, or I mentioned, and you realize that they asked the question, but they don't actually care. And that has a pretty significant impact on us and our ability to lead.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Obviously, the trust thing is going to show up first. Okay, do I trust this person? Then, all right, does this person even care? That obviously is going to be important, especially if people are going to be showing up every day and working with you and working on teams. And then ultimately, it's going to come down, okay, can this person help me? What is that, to achieve my goals, get where I need to go? What does that look like?
Right. I was talking with the chief learning officer for Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A, over the last 15, 20 years, has put a tremendous amount of effort into their leadership development. And this guy runs that. Mark Miller's his name. He's written several books. And he and I were talking about this. And he said at Chick-fil-A, when we're trying to develop a leader, he said the biggest challenge we have is, can they value both results and relationships? And he says, one of the things we teach our leaders, and I agree with him 100% on this, He said, we teach our leaders to, number one, admit that you value one more than the other. You personally, me personally, I might value results more than relationships, or the other way around. I might care more about building a relationship than I care about getting something done or creating accountability or, holding a bar at a certain level. So he says, number one, admit which one you are, and then he says, talk through your team and say, look, I'm going to try to get it closer to 50-50, which means I might sound tougher than I want to sound sometimes, if I'm a relationship kind of leaning person. I think those two are tough. If we step back and we're honest, I think we realize I'm not always results more than relationships. With some people in my world, I'm more about the relationship than about a result. I might not call them on something, and in other roles, I might be 100% about results and pay very little attention to the relationship. And great leaders you could look at those two things on a seesaw almost. They tend to be better and better over time at balancing the two.
So you show up, you're a leader, now you have a team. You're actually going to tell your team members, John, you're going to say, listen, I want to let you know that I typically will value results over relationships or vice versa. Is that a conversation you're having with these people up front?
It's a conversation I would have, yes. I don't know if you might be familiar with Pat Lencioni's work. He wrote a whole bunch of best-selling books. He's a friend of mine, and he writes a lot about vulnerability-based trust. He says, it's not just trust because we've spent, years together. It's trust because I've told you something that's a challenge for me. And he says, you don't have to go back to like your childhood or something like that. Just look, a challenge for me in the business world is I tend to, and that creates a trust like, wow, you're willing to put something out there. Because if you have that level of leadership and that level of respect and trust in an organization, that person will tend to be willing to mirror that. Look, if that person reports to you, let's say, the person you just told that to is more likely to say, look, David, I'm struggling. Something I struggle with is this. Can you help me with it? And as leaders, so often we have to be great coaches, but if we don't see what the person's not good at, and they're not usually going to tell us that unless we say, hey, I'm not perfect at everything either.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. And then, sometimes too, you have these teams, or not sometimes, I would say all the time, people are wired differently. So you have some people that are focused more on the relationship, and then you have other team members that are going to be focused more on the result. I guess I'm just thinking out loud. That's, like you said, is initially what's going to create that trust within the team. And then they're going to realize, wow, this person's actually telling me this. They actually do care enough to at least share that with us, right? And now other people on the team may, say, oh, okay, well, geez, if he's going to do that, I want to be in on this team as well. Is that kind of how the dynamic of it? Or
Yeah. Now, if you don't make any progress on that area, if you're, 5, 10, 20 years down the road, you're still awful at this balance and you're still saying that to your team doesn't take long to realize, okay, that's incompetence. You can say, hey, I'm working on this, but show that you made a little progress on it. That's the authenticity. If you're working on it, call yourself on it a couple times and then demonstrate progress in that area, because that gets to, that third question of, can this person help me? If they can't make progress in their own leadership, they probably can't help me make progress in my own leadership, even if it's of just self.
So how do you know, though? Let's say now you're trustworthy, you really do care, but, you have a team member that you just can't help them. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's not you, it's them, right? Because that happens as well. How do you deal with that situation?
Right. That's a great question. John Wooden was voted the best coach of the 20th century. He won 10 championships in 12 years. And tons and tons of college coaches and professional coaches would go meet with him and say, teach us some stuff. And one of them was meeting with Wooden, and he took pages and pages of notes after hours and hours of conversation. And then at the end of their meeting, their conversation, the guy walks to his car. John Wooden walks out with him. And John Wooden says, we could have saved all this time if I just told you my secret. The guy looks at Wooden and he's thinking like, is he kidding me? And Wooden says, yeah, my secret's pretty simple. He says, number one, make sure you have better players than the other team has. Number two, make sure that they put the team above their own selfish interests. And number three, practice the basics relentlessly. And those three things, you think about it, if you have somebody who's not the right person on your team, it takes some guts, but you have to have the conversations. And so many companies, so many organizations, I see them, they have a team, let's say 10 is world-class team. And they have a team with some 6 and 7 players, and they have a team, that same team has some 2 or 3 players. If the 2 or 3 players aren't going to head towards 6 or 7, you don't have a 6 or 7 team, and you will not get 6 or 7 results consistent. you'll get results closer to the 2 or 3. And some of the 6 or 7 players, they'll leave if there's no accountability for the lower performers.
Yeah, me in the past, I know I've, maybe kept some players or some team members on a team that maybe were, lower level players because I thought, well, I'd rather have the lower level players than no players. But ultimately what it does is it actually affects the whole team.
Oh, yeah. I love sports analogies, and if you look at like Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan in their championship runs, Jordan won 6 times, 6 championships, Kobe won 5. Neither of them were okay with having players that were okay losing on their teams. If they had a player that didn't show up at practice, both of them would have a major issue with it. And the reason they both played for the same coach, for Phil Jackson, for most of their careers, was that Phil Jackson had the same standard. If Phil Jackson is the leader, at least on paper, of the 2 teams, if he was okay with players not showing up for practice or showing up but not really being there, practicing halfway, Kobe and Michael Jordan both would have said, get rid of the coach. And that's true. When you have an all-star performer on your team and the people around them aren't, you create a challenge for that person. That person might be looking elsewhere. That's a really expensive thing. One of the amazing things, David, as leaders, most of us tend to, and it's crazy, but most of us tend to overrate our ability to coach excellence out of a mediocre performer.
Tell us more about that.
Well, another way to put it is about 90% of Americans think they're above average drivers. And you and I both know that's not right. You live near Boston. I live near New York City. They're not all that good on the road. And a lot of people in leadership roles think, you know what, give me this guy. I know in the past he hasn't, but under my coaching, I'm going to be able to pull out the best. And if you find yourself complaining about that person 6 months, a year down the road, you probably made a bad hire. You probably made an overestimation of what you're able to pull out of that person. Changing the reality of Southwest Airlines. I was talking to one of their learning development people a couple months ago, and she said, look, we have this saying, hire for character and train for skill. Character, which includes work ethic, right? Which includes humility. Those things are character. They're much, much harder to develop, even for the best leadership development person than a skill is. I could teach someone to listen, the skills of listening. But if they don't care about people, they're going to pretend they're listening.
What up, Masters? I'm going to get you right back to the show. I want to share a couple opportunities with you. First off, my new training program I'm super pumped about. People have been asking me for years, guys. It's School for Realtors. It's an expired training. I'm giving you everything, my friends, every single thing that you're going to need to convert expired sellers in this competitive time. All right, I have every single script you're going to need. From the initial conversation, how to keep people from hanging up on you, to the closing script, right? We're giving you a copy of our pre-listing packet. I'm giving you emails that you can literally copy and paste templates. I'm giving you a 65-day email campaign, guys, that you literally copy and paste. Expired flyers, okay, 2 different marketing pieces. And we're giving you actual ads that you can use on Facebook. Guys, these are targeted ads that I've been using on Facebook, where I'm generating people calling me and saying, hey, God, I see you guys everywhere. Yeah, why don't you come over and take a look at my house? So I'm giving you everything. This is called Expired School for Realtors. Simply go to schoolforrealtors.com. It costs you $149. I wanted to make this such a no-brainer because it's going to be the best investment you will ever make in your real estate business for $149. And here's a better thing. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee. So at the end, if you said, you know what, Dave, I just didn't get value in your expired training, then I'm going to give you your $149 back, and you still have all my materials. So how's that work, right? You can't go wrong. Listen, everything is here, everything you need. And here's the last thing. We have a monthly call. You're part of an awesome community where everybody in the community has the same goals, okay? Here's you're sharing things that work with each other, and I am logging in monthly and doing a live training for everybody. You have role play partners. Listen, this is everything you need. It's so simple. You go to schoolforrealtors.com, you get the download, and then you just start downloading. And I even made it step by step by step. Awesome opportunity for you. And then finally, and we're going to get you back to the show, I promise, if you love audiobooks or if you love podcasts, you need to check out Audible. Audible.com is Amazon's audiobook site. You can get yourself a copy of Crushing It or any book you want. I would encourage Crushing It. for free by going to davidsfreebook.com. Again, davidsfreebook.com. Get yourself a free copy of any audiobook you want on Audible. Yes, they're going to ask you for a credit card, but here's what you're going to do. As long as you cancel within 30 days, your credit card will never be billed. So schedule a reminder in your calendar 25 days out. And if for some reason you don't love the service, then you cancel and your card's never, ever charged. And you get to keep the book. Guys, listen, these are opportunities. How do you go wrong with either of these opportunities? Okay, listen, I just want to share that with you. So a couple opportunities, schoolforrealtors.com and davidsfreebook.com. Enjoy the rest of the show. All right, so let's say we're great leaders. I'd probably consider myself probably a 7.5 on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm always focused on becoming a better leader, right? Mm-hmm. But it also comes down to hiring the right people, right? Because I think you said it, or at least a version of it. I've heard someone say you can't motivate unmotivated people. So if you're a decent leader, you're working on your leadership, you're bringing people on your team, how important is it to set those expectations up front and set like those standards and saying, hey, when you join, like for instance, I get a perfect example. I just met with somebody in Sudbury. They want to sell a house for $900,000 that's worth $750,000. And the guy's meeting with agent after agent after agent. And I just said, hey, listen, I'm here. I'm looking for a win-win. I'm not going to lie to you. I'd love to get you $850,000 for the house, but it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? The house is worth $750,000. So I just want to be upfront with the guy, so I don't want to waste his time or my time. Isn't it the same thing when you're meeting with people? Listen, this is what's expected here. This is the culture of how we do things around here. How important is that?
Oh, incredibly important. Just finishing up a chapter in a new book. The chapter is called How to Get the Garden to Weed Itself. The point of the chapter is how do I get people that won't fit, that aren't the perfect person for my organization, to self-weed or self-select out of the interview process? And there are many ways, but I'll give you a few examples real quick. One example in the hospitality world, a big high-end hotel chain, during their interview process, they'll have a lot of people come when they're opening a new location, hundreds and hundreds of people. And they'll go through all these rounds of interviews. And then right before lunch, they'll get them all together and they'll have either a VP or a high-level executive, a CEO sometimes, speak to the group, and they'll tell two stories. One story is what we promise to our customers. And it might be 3 or 4 examples of things, what experience we have promised our customers. And then the other side of the story, or the other stories, are what price we pay when we work here in order to deliver on that promised experience. And then right before lunch, that person, that executive will say, look, some people want to pay that price. Some people absolutely do not. And you can see the sacrifices that are required. And they'll go through a whole bunch of examples of sacrifices. That you can't be sick and let that bother you if you promised a certain experience to your customers. They'll go through all these things. And then they say right before lunch, they say, some of you, we're thrilled that you came through the interview process, and some of you will come back after lunch and some of you won't. We're not going to decide that, you are. And they let the people say, you know what, that's a price I'm not willing to pay. So they're unbelievably clear about both sides, what we promise and what it costs us, what it takes out of us.
One of the challenges I own 2 real estate teams, and, most people, when you talk with them on the phone or interview them, they're obviously going to be the best version of them, right? They're all in. They want to make it happen. They want to make a couple $100,000 a year. But then when they show up, they realize, wow, this is a lot more work than I actually thought it was going to be. So one thing we're thinking about doing now is, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. We haven't done it yet. We've heard a few people are doing it, is doing group interviews with people, salespeople, but not telling them it's a group interview. So setting up so that they'll all show up at the same time. My thoughts are, by doing that, you're going to weed out half of them right there because they're like, I don't like this. So then it shows they're not competitive. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. I love it. I think one of the most important things you can do is get better and better over time with your interview process. Because reality check, Google right now, they have some of the most high-performing people in the world in their company. And they hire about 0.7% of the applicants that come to work there. And part of the reason they do that, and they have to do that, is they say, look, we're not going to have managers with 5 employees reporting to them. We're going to have managers with 20 or 30 employees reporting to them. So if we hire people that are not self-directed and self-motivated and are not some of the best performers, our managers won't be able to deal with that. So they find a lot of ways to weed them out. Part of the process includes what you just talked about. I highly encourage it. Sam Walton, when he built Walmart, in the early days, he would not hire someone with college experience. It's very simple. He said if they have college experience, they may think they're too good to do a lot of the work that we have to do to make a store work. And this includes people that would manage his early stores. He was a master at making sure he got the right people in the organization. That changes the whole game. Southwest Airlines does something just like you described. They have group interviews, and they set up certain scenarios where one person is presenting, and they're not watching that person. They're watching the other people to see if they're self-interested or interested in the team. Amazon does something very similar in the distribution centers. They'll give you real challenges to solve that center has, and then they'll put you in a team with your peers, and they'll say, that challenge you just worked on, it happened this morning with a couple changes. Here are the changes, figure it out. And they'll see how you deal with your real potential peers in trying to solve that. And they might even have someone in there that's just intentionally trying to disagree with logic, either yours or someone else's. They'll set up scenarios, and the person doesn't realize all this is going on. It's all orchestrated, but it's designed to make sure they don't get the wrong people. You get the wrong person, it wastes so much of your time, right? And your reputation as a business.
Yeah, without question. So I know we talked about leadership being authenticity. People are going to have to trust you. They're going to have to feel that you care about them. And also, can this person help me? The more I listen to you, I'm feeling like humility has to fall in there somewhere as well. Is that true?
Maybe you've read the book Good to Great, Jim Collins' book. So he has this concept of level 5 leadership. And he says a level 5 is someone who's got this combination of personal humility and professional will. And to me, that's just will is the hunger to, we will make an incredible, I'll hit that $200,000 sales goal, whatever it is, I'll hit this number, we'll build the biggest real estate team in this region, or we'll sell the most houses in this price range in the mid-Atlantic or in the Northeast. That's the professional will. But the personal humility says, I don't have all the answers on how to get there yet. It's a very rare combination. You see it in every aspect of life. We see it in sports all the time. Somebody with unbelievable talent and hunger, but they don't have the humility to say, I need some feedback. I need to work on this. I need different teammates around me.
I know I asked you to send me a couple questions, and I know you have a book. It's called Who Are You Becoming, which is an excellent book, and I've already started reading it. Why are questions so important? Obviously, it's the title of your book, but why are questions so important?
So we spend the bulk of our time and energy chasing the answers to questions, whether we've actually sat down and decided what the question is or not. As an example, in the business world, most businesses say, without necessarily even writing it down, how do I beat last year's something? Or how do I beat the last 5 years, even if it's not written out? Einstein, years ago, decades ago, was asked, if you had a really complicated problem to solve and only an hour to solve it, what's your strategy? What's your approach? And he said, I would spend the first 55 minutes trying to figure out what questions to ask, and then the last 5 asking and answering those questions. Let me put this in the real world for a couple seconds. Let's say it's marketing your business. Most people say, okay, how do we market so we get this many more leads, or how do we market so we get this much more revenue? A different question is, how do we market only using things that our team is incredibly good at and comes incredibly easy to our current business or our current team? Or how do we market in a way that it costs us absolutely nothing, but gets a return of? The point I'm getting at is just change the question. And I'm not saying those are the right questions. I'm saying play around with the questions before you decide which one to pursue. Mark Victor Hansen, Jack Canfield, the Chicken Soup authors, they came up with this question. How do we sell 1 million books in a single day? Which is a crazy thought, a crazy thing to ask. But some of your questions should create dramatic limits on you. Go back to the marketing thing as an example. You could say, how do we market in such a way that all of our marketing is only leveraging current raving fans, current people that have loved our work? How do we market in that way without directly contacting anyone other than the people that love us? How do we do that? And you'd be amazed how many different ways you can do that. I just did a program a few weeks ago for Alvin Ailey. Alvin Ailey is one of the biggest dance schools in the world. They have locations around the world. And to put this into that perspective, I spent some time with them talking through who their biggest sponsors are, who sponsors their programs around the world, and who might be a great introduction. Who do they think that I'd be a perfect fit to work with within their sponsors? And their sponsors include some of the most amazing organizations and people around the world. It just follows that logic of, how do I do all my marketing without ever reaching out directly to a new customer? And I'm not saying, like I said before, I'm not saying this is the question for you. I'm saying play around with the questions you're asking.
Sure.
And then pick a few that are worth pursuing. A lot of people say like the Wright brothers flew because of this and this and this. The Wright brothers flew because they asked very different questions than everyone else.
Yeah.
One of the biggest questions the Wright brothers asked is how do we learn a lot and actually stay alive?
Great stuff. It's funny, right now we're actually playing around a lot with doing targeted advertising on social media, on Facebook and Instagram and stuff. And we're kind of using it along the same lines as what you're talking about. What we're doing is we're putting ads out there, and what we're doing is testing, right? Where we're putting the ads out, we're asking questions, or we've ran some surveys to kind of see what people's biggest challenges are. And now we're running the ads based on the feedback we got, and then we're testing. And if this works, then we'll do more with it. So it's similar to what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
What are the biggest challenges? Or what stops people or organizations from making progress in leadership or in these areas?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think to me, it very often comes down to some very simple things. Usually what you know is less important than what you do. Most of us over the course of our lives, we've learned some incredible insights into whether it's leadership, marketing, coming up with creative solutions to problems. We've learned a tremendous amount of things. The problem is most of the time we don't implement enough of those. And I constantly challenge myself, but also organizations to pick one thing. Pick one thing. Let's say it's the questions we were talking about for a few minutes. Pick questions, and for the next 2 weeks, spend time every single day on saying, what are some better questions? What are some different questions? What are some questions we don't ask? What are some things that we don't question at all? And spend 2 weeks. Pick one pillar. If it's under the topic of leadership, let's say that under the topic of leadership, you say, I'm not great at building relationships. I'm pretty good at vision. I'm pretty good at creating clarity of what we're trying to accomplish. I'm pretty good at accountability, but I'm not great at relationships. Spend the next week, 2 weeks, month, pick one topic and focus on that piece for a fixed amount of time. If it's relationships, maybe you spend 1 or 2 interactions with people every single day over the next month. You just get good at asking them questions about stuff, and listening to them, or telling them something you appreciate about them, or telling them something about you saw them handle a challenge in a certain way and asking them a question instead of giving them something to do. Pick one pillar. I call it pick one pillar and dig into that pillar. And don't work on anything other than that pillar for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month.
That's excellent advice, man. How do our listeners get in touch with you, Jonathan, if they want to talk to you about coaching or anything, maybe having you come do a keynote like you did for us, which was fantastic, by the way? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. The easiest is through my website. It's just my name. It's jonathanfanning.com. And we have a pretty big YouTube channel and a lot of videos on the website as well. Because I spend my life in this stuff, I make a lot of videos that are 1 or 2 minutes long, and they're designed to help somebody who's in a leadership role but busy. And they're not going to take 20 minutes to watch or listen to things as often as they wish they could, but they'll watch a 1-minute video that makes them think, that gives them an idea.
Going off that point, how does somebody, because we're all super busy, right? How does somebody improve their leadership? What are some simple strategies or maybe some tips that we could use as leaders to become a better leader?
Sure. I don't think I can overemphasize the value of audiobooks or audio programs, because even though we're all busy, we spend a massive amount of time traveling, or if you're doing mind-numbing work, like anytime I'm doing anything linked to database or stuff that I don't have to put too much focus on, I'll have an audio book or I'll have a video going in the background. I might not catch it all, but with audio stuff, you can listen to it 5 times.
Yeah. Any recommendation you have for an audiobook on Audible?
Oh, there's a lot of really good ones. I like to pick either a person whose life I want to dig into because I respect something that they did. So I'll pick maybe Ray Kroc. For years, I dug into Ray Kroc, who built McDonald's. I dug into his life, and I read everything I could read about him. Same thing with Sam Walton and Walt Disney and Steve Jobs. And I'll pick someone and I'll dig into their life because that's how I'm wired. And I would put that out there to your listeners that as a leader, you're wired a certain way. You don't have to read the books I read. I pick biographies because I pull so much from them. It's one of my favorite things to study. But if it's not that topic, then pick a favorite author. Pat Williams is one of my favorite leadership authors. He's written about 80 books. John Maxwell's another one. He's written, I think, 90 books now. So pick an author you like their style and read 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 of their books. And you start to get inside of their head and you get some of their best stuff. John Wooden. John Wooden's one of my favorite leaders, people, and authors. So I think I've probably read every book he's ever written. He passed away a couple of years ago, but his books are worth reading multiple times. It's something I decided maybe 5 years ago. I decided I wouldn't read any more books unless they were worth reading more than once.
I like it. I like it. So for my listeners, you can get yourself a free book just by going to Audible. Go to davidsfreebook.com. Again, davidsfreebook.com. Get yourself a free copy of any of the books that John just mentioned. All fascinating people and awesome books. And I've read just about every John Maxwell book. So certainly highly recommend John. All right. So that said, man, listen, I really appreciate your time. Anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you? I know I've kind of been all over the place here. Anything I missed?
No, I think that was great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time too.
Yeah. And then final question, I mean, on our listeners' path to mastery, I mean, what's the one thing you want them to take really from this interview today?
I would say don't arrive. Don't arrive. I spoke for McDonald's about 1.5 years ago, and everyone that had been there for decades said when Ray Kroc was building McDonald's, they said he would say it all the time. He would say either you're green and growing or you're ripe and rotting. And I think that's true as a parent, as a leader, as a person in business, as a spouse, as a citizen. And don't arrive. Don't ever get to a point where you're, once in a while somebody say, yeah, I have enough stuff to read, or I have enough stuff to think about.
I love it. It's brilliant. Well, hey, man, I just want to thank you for your time. It's been awesome. And I look forward to connecting again in the future, man.
Sounds good. Enjoy the afternoon.
Masters, if you know me, you know health and nutrition is number one, and that's why I'm an advisor for Advocare products. Listen, in my opinion, these are the best products on the planet, guys. You get what you're supposed to get, right? I use the products for health. I use the products for energy. I use the products for wellness. So we have all the different lines from Spark, starting your day with a great energy shot, all the way to pre-workout. It's whatever your goals are, right? It's whatever your goals are. You can check out the products at www.livelongersmarter.com. That's my website. Or reach out to me, and I'd love to have a 30-minute or, anywhere from 15 to 30-minute conversation with you, just talking about your health and nutrition goals and what I can do to help you achieve those goals. So again, products, energy line, wellness line, whether it's joints, you're getting up there in the age, you just want to take care of yourself. I'll tell you, one of the greatest compliments I get is people, you say, wow, you look amazing. I cannot believe you are the age you are. Weight loss. I've helped lots of people, guys, lose weight, not just lose it, but keep it off with the products. And the cool thing is, I'd say 75% of the people who start with our products, they continue using our products even after they initially tried them, which has been amazing. And strength, if you're into bodybuilding, then hey, Rich Fronin, okay? I don't know if you know who Rich Fronin is. He's an advocate for Advocare as well. So amazing products. You can see us. We're featured on NASCAR, professional soccer, college basketball, college football, Men's Health magazine last month. These are the real deal, guys. LiveLongerSmarter.com is the website, or reach out to me if you, like I said, if you want to have a personal conversation with me, just send me an email. In the subject line, just put Advocare products, and I'd love, like I said, schedule a 15 to 30-minute call with you to talk about your health and nutrition goals. Guys, you rock. Live longer, smarter. And as Gary Keller eloquently said, if you don't take care of your body, where are you gonna live? You rock.
You are listening to One More Sale with your host, David I. Hill, author of the Sales Playbook. Get your copy at www.thesalesplaybook.net.